Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning, Councillor Nicol.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councillor Paquette.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councillor Walters. Councillor Walters.
Oh, forgive me. Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Banga.
Happy to be here.
Good morning. Councillor Carmel is here in person.
Good morning.
Welcome. Councillor Katerina.
Yes.
Good morning. Councillor Zadig.
Good morning.
Thank you. Councillor Essinger.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Hamilton.
Good morning.
Good morning. That's everyone. So before we go in private again to finish up on 9.2, we should add a 614, which, do you have a title for that, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, it's a COVID update. It's a verbal report. Excuse me, it's a verbal report from the city manager.
Okay, and I understand from Mr. Laughlin that there's a private dimension to that as well that they can share with us after we finish 9.2. And then, there's quite a bit of public information that can be shared with us and the public as well. So we would come back, we'd get a bit of some sensitive intergovernmental information first in private, and then we'd come back into public for 614 after we've done the in private. So can I get a motion to add 614, understanding there will be a private component? Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Banga. Are there any questions on that? We'll have the relevant FOIP provisions for when we take the motion to go in private for that portion of 614. Please vote to add 614 to the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'm a yes.
We're just sending the vote out just now. We just had to add the item. No, we're not sending the vote out right now? Yeah, and we're just not able to display it.
Do you want to just do unanimous consent? I'm not sensing any objection to the addition of the item.
So. It's out, Mr. Mayor, I believe.
Is it
Andrew's
coming?
got it. Yeah, we're just missing
go.
it. We're just missing a few folks.
I'm
a yes.
Yes, Zadig.
Oh, I was in last night's meeting still, literally and figuratively. So,
We're good to go. We got
okay,
all the votes.
thank you. Display the vote.
We can't display it, but it passed
Okay,
unanimously.
carried unanimously. Thank you. So
And we
that's
just need a few minutes to close up the council chambers. And just to remind those on the delegation and for the Google Hangout, if you're not on the delegation for item 9.2, which is the task force appointment recommendations, if you could please leave the Hangout.
So I do need a motion to go in private to complete 9.2 and hear some information on 6.14.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Knack. And just to be clear on 9.2, that would be section 17, disclosure harmful to personal privacy, and 24, advice from officials. And on 16, I'm guessing it would be 21 and 24.
Yes, please.
21 being disclosure harmful to intergovernmental relations, 24 advice from officials. So please vote to go in private.
Yes.
Yes.
Here comes the vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the vote, please. And that's carried unanimously. Okay, we'll take a moment to Okay, we're back online. Let's deal with the motion on 9.2 in 3 parts. I think that had been made previously and is on the floor from before, I believe, or no? Yeah, Henderson, seconded by Councillor Banga, put the motion in 3 parts in 9.2 on the floor. I think we're now ready to deal with that. There has been a request to divide it for voting purposes. Part 1 appoints the individual named in attachment 1 to the chair. Part 2 appoints the individuals named in attachment 2 to the committee. Part 3 keeps those appointments in private until they can be announced within a short period of time, subject to Section 29 of FOIP. So that motion is before us now. I will ask the clerks to call the vote on Part 1.
Can I, just a quick double check, we need to be in our private thing, I'm guessing, to vote on this, correct?
Yes, if
Yes,
you
you
could
have
all
to-
go back into the closed session in eScribe, and if you could click on item 9.2, it shouldn't make a difference, but MJ's just calling up the vote for motion 1, please.
There we go. Please vote on Part 1.
We're just waiting for a few more councillors.
Perhaps I should have roll called us and made sure everyone was
Yes,
back.
it hasn't showed up.
Thank you, Councillor Essinger. Oh, we've got you. Councillor Katarina. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not, I can't get into the private, to go back to the private one again, so. Yeah, it hasn't come up on mine.
Could you possibly declare your vote verbally?
So we're doing this for, part 1, right?
Part 1, yeah.
Part 1, no.
We have 13 votes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We'll call that a roll call then. Please vote. And that's carried 10-3. So then on Part 2, appointing the individuals listed in attachment 2.
Verbal again, Mr. Mayor, no.
Thank you, Councillor Katarina.
We have 13 votes.
Display the vote. And that's carried 9-4. And then Part 3, please vote on keeping it in private until it's ready to be released shortly.
Verbally, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Katarina.
Thirteen votes, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote. That part's unanimous. All right, let's pivot to 6:14. Actually, strictly speaking, yeah, no, we'd be on the 6s next, so we'll go to 6:14 next, and go to Mr. Laughlin for some comments.
We actually do have a quick presentation, if
Great, go
that is
ahead.
okay.
Yeah, of course. Thank you
Thanks.
for putting this together for today.
Our pleasure. So in addition to myself and Ms. Andrzejczuk and members of the executive leadership team, David Aiken is also here to answer some questions, should that be needed. So today I'd like to share information related to the increased case numbers in the Edmonton zone, including what may be driving the increase in the approaches we are considering to manage the situation. With over 1,000 active cases, we share the concern of Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health about this recent increase in COVID-19 cases in the zone. We continue to be committed to keeping Edmontonians and employees safe. These increases have persisted over many days and likely signal a reduction in people's strict adherence to public health measures. Edmontonians have been doing a great job in the past to flatten the curve, and our recent work with Alberta Health and Alberta Health Services has been focused on reinforcing the public's commitment to stopping the spread. AHS has completed a review of the current cases and found that more than 10% of people are going to work or going out in public when ill or waiting for testing instead of self-isolating. Others are attending social gatherings when symptomatic while waiting for test results. These behaviors are contributing significantly to transmission of the virus, and if they continue, they have the potential to turn the dial back and cause us to take a step back in our relaunch efforts. We're in discussions with the Health Zone Emergency Operations Center 3 times per week and with the Alberta Health team dealing with shelter outbreaks, and we're talking to them 7 days a week. Earlier this week, administration offered a number of strong recommendations for approaches our provincial partners should adopt to manage this increasingly unacceptable situation. What is at stake is the safety of our community and the potential for overwhelming our healthcare system. Today's discussion is about the imperative of changing the behavior of Edmontonians. This is a different type of discussion than a few weeks ago when our focus was on balancing relaunch efforts and preparing for recovery actions. As mentioned, administration has been working with Alberta Health Services and Alberta Health, and we've identified that we strongly support the following public health approaches in order to bring down the number of cases in Edmonton. First, introducing more collaborative communications to specific groups that are experiencing outbreaks. By aligning messages and targeting susceptible groups and areas, we can speak with a stronger voice and make a greater impact. We will use the data from Alberta Health Services to identify these groups so that we can create and sustain a behavior change. Secondly, we support reductions to cohorts and a decrease in social gathering limits. That includes advising Edmontonians to restrict their Thanksgiving dinner to their immediate household members. Third, we're encouraging Edmonton businesses to adopt work-from-home strategies where possible. And fourth, restricting non-essential travel for Edmontonians within Edmonton and beyond. You'll recall that we developed this second wave progression model to support any decisions around our response to the rising case numbers and the movement from open to watch status. It shows the kind of options and approaches that the city will consider should public health conditions escalate. We are currently in the limited risk level 1 bucket and have signaled to our public health partners that additional caution and restrictions are warranted because of the recent escalation in cases. We are strongly considering moving to level 2 once we determine the specific impacts. The epidemiology data we received from the province doesn't reflect outbreaks or COVID transfer from city facilities, programs, or services. However, it's likely only a matter of time before we will need to activate additional restrictions or consider changes to the many services we offer. Data surveillance on escalating active case numbers still point to social gatherings, private gatherings, and contact with people outside of a cohort as a major contributing factor for COVID transfer. While the province monitors the Edmonton zone situation and assesses the need to introduce additional measures, administration continues its work to educate Edmontonians on their responsibility to keep themselves and others safe. Enforcement officers regularly monitor business compliance with health guidelines and indoor face covering compliance of the public. Their recent efforts have been focused in watch zones. Internally, we are carefully reviewing our reintegration and return to work strategies to ensure that they can accommodate additional health and safety measures, should they be required, and encouraging those that can work remotely to continue to do so. We await direction from the province on measures we can take to return their community to a safer status. Whether the behavior change involves those in private gatherings or in the broader community, We are ready to work with Edmonton Health Zone authorities to bring the situation back into balance. We also continue to monitor our programs, services, and facilities to quickly respond should circumstances require us to do so to ensure the safety of citizens and staff. As we navigate through this and work through this, we will provide an update at our next Emergency Advisory Committee meeting, which is next Thursday. That concludes the presentation and the update, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. We'll open the speakers list. Any takers?
We have Councillor Banga on the list, and we'll just display it shortly.
Sure. Councillor Banga, start us off. Go ahead.
I guess going back and forth from private to public consent, I guess sessions is kind of confusing. Please let me know if this question is not appropriate for this session. So, in talking about more enforcement than education, if we are considering that, I know we have enough capacity, but for the social gatherings in people's places, backyards, and with the reduced number of people, can we enter without a complaint in that residence without a warrant in the absence of state of local emergency?
So Councillor Banga, our authority would not extend that far without further authority from the province.
So what good would it be?
Our authority would be to monitor, and we're doing that. Our peace officers are doing that. And where we're seeing not adhering to the guidelines or the restrictions that are currently in place from the province, to alert the appropriate health authorities, and it would be in their purview to take next steps.
So if somebody's having a big gathering in their backyard and we see it happening, so what is our step? Report it to Alberta Health?
It would be to report it to the appropriate authorities. And because these are health restrictions, the health component in terms of enforcement would be the mechanism that would be used right now to ensure that folks are following the restrictions and adhering to the guidelines.
So I know the rules, but what is the practicality of this thing? By the time we do all these notifications, that stuff is gone.
Depending on the situation, Councillor Banga, certainly on private property, we wouldn't. On public property, we'd continue to use the method that we have been using, which is to educate, ensure folks understand the need for adhering to these restrictions and the guidelines. And again, if there is non-compliance, then we would elevate.
For some reason, you were cut off.
I just said that more difficult for us in private settings, but in public settings, we would take the approach that we've been using previously, which is to educate, ensure people understand the need for following the restrictions and the guidelines. And if there continues to be a deviation from that, then we would elevate to the proper authorities, which in this case is the health authorities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
So just, I was interested, I was going to ask questions about what would trigger SOL, or why we would trigger another state of local emergency. We're not close to that on the continuum, our own continuum right now, correct?
That's correct.
So, but we do have some other things we could do before we got there in terms of, without having to declare another state of local emergency, we could, we may have to, just to understand what may come, because I think, if I understand you correctly, we're at a point right now where if we can get it back under control with better adherence and all those kind of things, that we may not have to go to more drastic measures. But just to understand what those more drastic measures are and the kind of way we'd walk through them. The next step for us probably would be having to close down some of the facilities that we've opened up, correct?
Either close down or limit the amount that could gather in an
Right.
indoor space, or tighter restrictions on some of our existing facilities and services that we offer.
And then, so at what point, if it does continue to deteriorate, which, I think, if we can't get it under control of people, if we can't get people to make the choices we need them to make to stop that from happening, at what point would we look at bringing the state of local emergency? What powers would we need in order to do that?
Well, I think we would continue to strongly encourage the health authority to take those steps.
Yeah,
on the
no,
basis-
absolutely. I'm not suggesting that on the doorstep. It's just so we understand if we can't use, if the measures that are happening right now don't get us there, what it looks like.
Tough for me to say if we would pursue the state of local emergency again on the basis of a health authority in place and making decisions around restrictions and voluntary following of guidelines, et cetera. I think if there was a local city of Edmonton boundary concern that we had, whatever it is, facilities, transportation systems, I think we wouldn't pursue it. But if there was a localized issue in a facility or on our transit system or whatever it is, we may consider it. And recall that one of the big drivers for pursuing it the first time and putting it in place was the travel restriction.
Yeah.
And that was within the city of Edmonton. And so that would, if there wasn't a positive response from the health authority, I would see that being potentially one of the things that would drive us to that decision.
So at this point, where we're at, our advice is still the same. That we have concerns. There is recommendations. That we need to take those concerns seriously from AHS. If we don't, AHS probably will have to come in with some more draconian measures as well. And we would be looking at the tools in our arsenal, and if we had to declare a state of local emergency to be able to address those. But we're hoping we don't have to go there if people can get their act together right now.
That's correct. All in the continuum, and all will be driven by cases, location of transfer, and it could include anything within that continuum. From a delegation perspective, we would, if we see something within a facility, we wouldn't wait. We would action fairly quickly in terms of closure or adjustments in terms of capacity allowances.
Great. Okay, well, hopefully we don't have to go there. So, but I just thought it was good to understand what may have to come next. Great,
Correct.
thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Knack?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. As part of the conversation, so we're talking about what could potentially happen if people aren't maybe being a little more diligent, particularly in those private gatherings. So as part of that, being able to share, take, for example, Ontario, which a few weeks ago did a pretty significant reduction again to what they allowed for gatherings in indoors and outdoor spaces. So can we just, as part of the thought that we want to talk about what some of these other jurisdictions are doing, because I think even in Ontario's case, they've got a lower per capita rate than we do right now, and yet they still took some pretty substantial measures. So just to help make sure people understand that if we don't choose to do this now, these are the type of things that could happen, and of course they've chosen to take those type of measures so that they don't have to ideally further shut down businesses, shut down their economy. So it feels like it should go without saying, but I feel like we're all of us are in this each and every day. And I think a lot of other folks are a little more fatigued and stressed about different things. So they might not be aware about what's happening in the rest of even just the country and understand what steps could be taken if we weren't thinking about this.
It's a good reminder that we're not in this alone, and we continually look at what others are doing and the rationale and why they take steps that they do. And those are things that we share with the health authority on a regular basis and in the regular conversations we have with them. But yes, you're right. The approach, and to echo what I shared with Councillor Henderson, all of this is part of the continuum with the goal to ensure that we're not seeing a significant respike, and I think we're in the early days of that. And the word to ensure that hits home significant, because there has been a steady climb in cases, but that can happen when you reopen or relaunch. So it is being prepared to respond so that it doesn't go back to when we initially had a pretty significant shutdown at the start of the pandemic and the cases increasing. So it is learning from other municipalities, other agencies, and applying those. And yes, crystal clear that there are stronger measures that can be taken if folks choose not to follow the guidelines and the restrictions that are currently in place.
Yeah, thank you. And the last question for me is just again, and you've talked about it in this presentation. I think we've heard Dr. Hinshaw talk about it often. I do find that there's still some confusion, maybe by folks again who aren't paying as close of attention, because what they hear, I'll see the posts on social media from people saying, well, why can't I have a family gathering with 2 or 3 other households at Thanksgiving, but yet I'm allowed to go out to a restaurant? Well, the answer we know, and it's been made quite clear, is because people are being far more responsible in those public places than they might be in their private households. But I don't know if that is as well known as it needs to be. So as part of this conversation we're having and some of the public messaging we'll be doing with Alberta Health to drive home that the reason why we're actually right now, based off your presentation, suggesting and recommending that people don't get together on Thanksgiving is because, unfortunately, people have not been as diligent as they should be when they've had gatherings at their households over the last few weeks and months.
That's correct. The predominance of transfer is happening in those private gatherings, either at offsite venues or at their own residence. And David shares on a regular basis with you the compliance that we're seeing from the mask perspective, and it's pretty positive in public settings. So it is a recognition of strong adherence in the public environment, which includes, as you said, businesses. But what we're seeing is maybe there's too much relaxation in those private settings, and you're bang on. I don't like to be nor does Dr. Hinshaw be the message of you can't spend Thanksgiving with your family, your extended family, but it could lead to more drastic restrictions if we don't take those steps.
And so how does that messaging maybe look a bit different? And the reason I ask is that, early on in this, we were all sitting in front of our computers or TVs at 3:30 watching Dr. Hinshaw's updates. Now things are in a slightly bit of a return to normal, and we aren't necessarily hearing her messages each time. So how are we trying to send that message differently?
Maybe David can speak a bit to what we're looking to do to help with that, sending the message consistently.
So a good point, Councillor. So I have reached out to our communications folks in regards to exactly that. What new approaches? There are some lessons to be learnt from different approaches that the communication folks down east are taking to get those populations turned around. So I think there's some new novel approaches to sort of ensure that we get that behavioural change. Because again, after 8 months of this, I think we've got to look at new and different approaches to catch the right focus groups, targeted communications, and that's certainly something that the team in comms is working on.
Great. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe just picking up on that a little bit. Sorry, if I could pass the chair to Councillor Henderson, I think is next.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Henderson. I mean, there's a strong message around accountability for families and households that I think Councillor Knack has reinforced there. And an important difference between what's happening in a commercial setting at a restaurant where everyone's got PPE, surfaces are being sanitized, utensils and flatware are being sanitized, and the livelihood of the people and the owners and the businesses is dependent on maintaining public hygiene. And I think I want to start by just reinforcing that that's not where we're seeing the issues. People can feel confident to go out and support our local businesses at a time where they're struggling, and that may be the best place to go for Thanksgiving dinner to support our economy and to make sure that there isn't transmission in private homes where that care and attention isn't necessarily, in some cases, as rigorous as it is with our business. But I want to start with just verifying that our businesses are doing a phenomenal job of relaunch so far, and the data also supports that, notwithstanding this growth from other transmission sources. Is that fair?
Yeah, David can supplement this, but I think the short answer is yes.
Completely agree. The data surveillance information shows very low numbers in the 1 percentile of any sort of link to restaurants or retail. So a great job by those folks.
Well, and we had seen early in relaunch a couple of bars and restaurants shut down in response to their own outbreaks, and the protocols get more and more stringent. So it's not a time to let up on that, because that is working and that is helping us keep the economy and those businesses going at a time where they're really, really struggling. So that's the other risk, is that if this gets away from us because community transmission starts in private gatherings at private homes or other gatherings where the measures are not being observed for hand hygiene, for distancing, for isolation, and for face coverings, that's how this can get away from us, and that could, not to raise the specter of it, but that could be a serious threat to our economy, which is in a very fragile state right now.
That's correct.
So that is what is at stake, along with our freedoms to associate and be out, and all of those other issues that we want to avoid a lockdown for reasons of liberty. But I think we also can't afford another lockdown economically at this point, is what I'm hearing from our businesses. I don't know what you're hearing.
Well, and if Stephanie's on the call, I think she could probably echo that based on the engagement that her team does with the BIAs. But I would agree that we're in the relaunch phase, and it's been a slow climb for some of our businesses, and they've adapted well to the restrictions that are needed based on the guidelines. But sort of a swift back to closing everything would be, I think, pretty significant for our local economy.
So we need to avoid that. We need to avoid that for our mom and pop businesses, for our retailers, for employment. We desperately need to avoid that. However, those are the measures that, if case counts rise, those are the kinds of measures that are out there that we've seen come into place out east and in other parts of the world that we may still be able to avoid with good due diligence starting immediately.
That's correct.
Okay. So, and then the other thing is, this is no longer, I mean, this was sort of characterized early on as a big city issue, but now that the virus has found its way into rural communities, remote communities, small towns, every part of the world and every part of Alberta and every part of our region, this is now no longer just a City of Edmonton issue. This is an Edmonton zone issue. Communities around us, where people come back and forth for jobs, for recreation, for various things. It is a borderless region. So this issue is an Edmonton zone issue, not a City of Edmonton alone issue. Fair?
That's correct.
And the jurisdiction of Dr. Sikora as the medical officer for the zone under Dr. Hinshaw is kind of from Parkland County to Strathcona, and from Sturgeon to Leduc, and all of the urban centers and Indigenous communities within.
That's correct.
And to the extent possible, a consistent approach for that whole area will get us the best results and be fairest to our businesses. Also fair?
That's correct, because there are no borders when it comes to that activity.
Okay, all right, we're 100% on the same page. Just, I thought so, but just checking. So I'm out of time, I'll take the chair back.
All yours.
Any other questions? Maybe just then as chair, you'll keep us posted in between on developments and any action the city needs to take, and then our next touch point on this, all other things being equal, would be Emergency Advisory Committee next week.
That's correct, and continuing with the apologies, I'm not sure if it's now just once a week or twice a week from Mr. Aiken in terms of those regular
You'll
updates.
continue to send us memos and share information with the public.
That's correct.
Through different communications
That's
channels.
correct.
Okay, that's helpful.
I'll move to receive this for information.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. If there's nothing further, we'll go to the vote.
Yes, Zadek.
Thank you. Please vote.
We're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote. That's carried. Okay, there's one more bit of business and then a bit of scheduling to deal with, all before we run out of time at noon here. So the other item was bylaw 7.5, bylaw 19438 to amend bylaw 5590, the traffic bylaw, to enable the citywide seasonal parking ban. Councillor Cartmel had selected this with questions, so we'll just get the delegation in place. We've almost covered the full span of municipal complexity in just one morning here. Councillor Carmel, go ahead with your questions.
Thank you, Mr.
Unless
Mayor.
administration has any introductory comments.
Your
Sorry.
worship, members of council, we do have a brief presentation if that's your wish. Otherwise, we can go straight to questions.
Anyone want the presentation? Not hearing any, we'll go straight to questions then. Thank you for preparing one though, but Councillor Cartmel, we'll dive right in with questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I appreciate we probably did talk about this a little bit when this first came up, but I'm concerned with that a citywide parking ban gives some people no choices. And I'll just very quickly illustrate with an example. In the community of Paisley, through rezonings and then further applications, we've got several locations of stacked row houses that have 8 residential units plus 4 units being built above garages. So 12 dwelling units in a place where there is 4 garage stalls and potentially 4 driveway stalls. Some of these buildings are lane only, so they don't have a front street. So those 7 units alone each have potentially between 12 and 24 vehicles attached to them and only 8 places to park. Paisley is not well served by transit. There's no schools within walking distance. You have to leave for employment. So you need a car. Where do those cars go? They literally must be on the street. And if we have a parking ban, where do they go?
So, Councillor, I'll provide a little bit of sort of the thought around how we've tried to implement this, knowing that there are challenges for some areas. So the ban would be implemented in 2 stages. Stage 1 would be similar to what we have now with a restriction on collectors and arterials. Once that is complete, the work is complete on those, stage 2 would move the ban and shift it over to the local or residential roads. And the thought behind that is if we are restricting the local or residential roads, the adjacent collectors are available for parking for those folks who have no parking on site. So it does result in a little bit of walking for a period of 1 to 2 days. But however, that is one of the alternatives. We also are encouraging neighbors to work with one another, and part of the, the understanding around this is that we do have a significant communications plan that will help people understand what some of those alternatives might be.
Well, in this community, and I'm sure there's others, this is one of the new communities in Heritage Valley, and it's one of the densest communities outside of the core. So there's not a lot of free space. And I'm not sure that people would understand the distinction between a local collector and an arterial. But quite frankly, I think there is not that gradual gradation of road classification. You go from your driveway to a local road to an arterial, and there's no in between. It's on several of these neighborhoods, you get there by the arterial, and then you are on your front street. I in this one in particular, but I'm sure there's other situations, particularly in my ward, but I'm sure in others, where these people will be left with nowhere to go with their car.
I think, Councillor Carmel, you raised something that has come up in previous conversations, which is we're going to have to be adaptive in terms of approach and creative, and it may mean some specific community engagement on the basis of what's available. So I think our commitment, and we know it's not going to be perfect, but our commitment is where you have these unique locations that we're not sort of applying the paintbrush approach, but rather the fine tool approach. And certainly with your strong connection, each of you, to your specific wards, I think working with you to understand those areas of concern is something that we'd appreciate in terms of feedback from you, so that we can start to be a bit more surgical in approach when it comes to a particular community.
Okay, I'll listen to other questions. Thank you.
Councillor McKeon?
Well, Adam, you sort of answered my question, but of all the neighborhoods in Ward 6, I see Oliver being the one that'll be the most challenging because of a lack of on-street public curb. And people would then, I think, be forced to go into pay parking. So I don't know how we would handle this with nuance, but I guess I'd encourage you to look at Oliver as a challenging neighborhood as far as this particular strategy goes.
Councillor, I think you raised some good points, and what we are committed to, as Mr. Laughlin indicated, is that we want to be flexible and dynamic. We've tried to put together a program based on as much as we know and the feedback we've gotten, but we also understand that because it's our first time doing this, that it will require us to be flexible, and I think that's one thing we're certainly committed to. And Mr. Laughlin also indicated, we would certainly be more than open to having any input or feedback that you have, in particular as councillors, with respect to your specific wards, and almost a similar approach as to what we did seeking your input when we were rolling out some of the playground zone and speed programs.
Right. No, I just wanted to speak to that one neighborhood being particularly challenging. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Knack?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the information. So is there any plan to engage or send out correspondence to, say, community leagues or churches or major larger developments that might be within communities that have a parking lot available, just to A, let them know what we're doing, and B, maybe give them the opportunity to think about how they might help fill that gap in those rare circumstances. I think everyone generally appreciates that we're doing this to provide much better service, and if we sort of identify some of those community partners in advance, maybe there's a way to help offset some of that, those challenges. I can think of a few spots in Ward 1 where there's a nearby community league hall and maybe not a lot of on-street parking, or nearby school or nearby church. And if those organizations were aware, maybe the neighbors and the community can start engaging now to help find those alternatives.
Councillor, you hit some key elements that we've already been considering in terms of who we could partner with. So that inventory work of potential partners is underway, and we've been focusing on really a robust communications and engagement plan. Perhaps I'll just have Ms. Owen comment a little bit on that, but significant effort has been taken in terms of identifying what are those levers we can pull to help mitigate any of the impacts to citizens using a lot of that, that potential inventory that's out there.
Yeah, just to augment that, Councillor, in the spirit of a connected Edmonton, we do need to do outreach with key stakeholders and partners to try and make this more workable for those who might have difficulties, and we're committed to that.
And the other piece is, as we continue to improve our technology, I know we've talked about in the past, updating our equipment to mimic what you see in spot. Sorry, my microphone was a bit odd there. So spots like Toronto, where you can see a real-time map of where equipment is, as we evolve into that, that would allow us to be a bit more responsive to even individual roadways within communities. Once we see they've been done, that's going to allow us to lift those parking bans quicker. This year's going to be different because we don't quite have that, but as we move into that, would that make it easier to be able to lift the bans?
Definitely, Councillor, and we have made enhancements to the mapping display system, so that information will be available, and the intent is that we allow residents to get back onto the street as soon as possible. So by having this updated map, residents can determine when the work is scheduled and when it should be completed, so that they can minimize the time that they have to move their vehicles.
Perfect. And we are going to, I think I saw it somewhere, but I just need to make sure I didn't miss it. We are going to send sort of a mail out this year to all households to let them know about these changes, along with all of the other mechanisms that are available to us. This is one that we feel is important to get in the hands of everyone, so they have something they can hold on to and know what's being changed and how we're operating differently.
Councillor, absolutely. We're looking at mailing out a postcard to every household that will outline the information, something that somebody can put on their fridge, and just as a reminder of the process. So that's been taken into consideration also.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Just to clarify, Councillor Knack, that is pending approval of the bylaw. So we've got everything in the works, but we haven't sent anything at this point.
Understandable. Yeah, I'm happy to support the bylaw when the time comes. Thank you.
You want to put first reading on the floor then?
I would love to. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Henderson. Okay, first reading's before us, but we'll carry on with questions. Councillor Banga.
Thank you. In the snow clearing guidelines, ice and control guidelines, it is arterial collectors and residential are the last piece to be done. When we are enforcing the parking ban, provided this bylaw passes, how would, let's say, you're almost done with the arterials, and obviously you have to do the residential roads next, and there is some kind of announcement made before that, letting the residents know that we are coming there tomorrow or day after tomorrow, whatever the case may be. And if another snowfall comes in the meantime, what would be the rescinding? How would the rescinding of that parking ban from the residential roads be working?
Councillor, we've taken into consideration this process. If we were in phase one of the process, we got a heavy snowfall, we'd remain in phase one and finish off that process, then move into phase two, which would be the residential areas. If we were in phase two and had a heavy snowfall, we'd go back to phase one, finish that off, and then go back to phase two and continue on from where we left off, ultimately doing all the residential areas, but those ones that we'd already done would be last in line to be done again. And that process has been thought through. Once again, we're looking at communication processes, signboards, ETS buses, digital boards in the communities. The big thing are signboards. We've got big, nice signboards. That was identified in the survey from the public. That's what they wanted to see. to put in the residential areas to let people know that we're coming and that they can, they need to move their vehicles, and also communicating the fact, the big change is, once that road's plowed, you're more than welcome to park back on that road as long as it's an area you can legally park.
Okay. Provided the bylaw passes today.
Absolutely.
And this strategy or plan, how is that being communicated, going to be communicated to people, folks?
We do have a website, edmonton.ca/safe travels, which would be the ability to get information in real time. Also, community members can sign up for notifications. We'll be using Facebook, Twitter as a process. Also, signboards that you already see across the community will communicate that there's a snow ban. Hopefully a lot of take-up from the media on the process. And the big piece are these signboards that will be placed in the neighborhoods to advise residents that we are coming.
Are we looking at any paid advertisement from on the papers, on, I guess, TV and radios? Are we looking at some of this stuff? Because a lot of people, they're not familiar with social media. They're, I guess, the only thing they do is watch news or hear news.
So, Councillor Banga, the elements that Mr. Simpson described are part of an overall comprehensive communications rollout that has been planned out pending approval. We would start executing on it, and has many different elements, including radio, as well as some other elements of print media. But what we've relied on is the expertise from our communications team to identify what the most effective means of communication are, and focusing on those. So perhaps Ms. Owen could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, thank you. And for us, effective is both cost-effective and penetrating. So as Mr. Sebrick mentioned, there will be radio as part of the communications components. I would need to double check on television. It's extraordinarily costly. I don't believe that's the direction we're planning to take at this point, but radio can be very cost-effective.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson?
Just to be clear what we're being asked today, this gives you the power to add all roads into the powers that you already have, correct? It really does nothing more than that.
Correct.
How you operationalize that, what procedures and policies go into place are not part of the bylaw. This just empowers that conversation.
Correct.
So without this, we can't have the other conversation about how. So this doesn't mean you're going to go out there and declare a snow ban and everybody can't park anywhere in the city until it's raised. It just allows you the tools to say, when we declare a snow ban, we can override the parking signs that are up there right now.
Correct.
And how that gets proceduralized is an entirely different conversation that we've already had in some ways, that you're still working on and trying to work out, that there's nuances to figure out. We're going to have to play with it as we go, but none of those procedural pieces can be dealt with if we don't give you the power to do it.
Correct, and the key is that we know that we have to be agile, because we will learn from this, and we will want to adjust so that we best meet the needs of the citizens.
Those procedures, those policies are not what you're asking us to approve today. We've already had that conversation. I'm guessing we'll continue to have it for time immemorial. This just empowers the possibility to figure out how to apply those procedures.
Correct.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Excellent line of questions. All of you, but particularly Councillor Henderson, is very, very helpful clarification there. Any other questions before we consider first reading? Well, I guess anyone wishing to speak to it? Going once? Going twice? Please vote on first reading.
Yes, Zadek.
We're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote. Carried unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move second reading of item 7.5.
Second.
Please vote on second reading.
Yes, Zarek.
We're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote. Carried unanimously. I'll just hazard, or if you want to move it, I'll just test you.
Yeah, I'll move consideration for third, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any objection to proceeding with third reading? No? Then by unanimous consent, we'll proceed with third reading. Now you want to move third reading?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll move third reading of bylaw 19438.
Second.
Third and final reading, please vote.
Councillor Knack?
Sorry, there it is. It's in now, I think.
Thank you. Good to go.
Display the vote. Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, those are all of the regular items of business. There is a schedule change. If I could pass that to you two gentlemen.
Councillor Cartmell, are you
Councillor
able to
Cartmell.
make the notice of motion on your right-hand side?
I'd be happy to. So I will move that council waive the rules on providing notice of motion as set out in section 32 of bylaw 18155, council procedures bylaw, to allow Councillor Henderson to make a motion without notice regarding changes to the council calendar for November 2020.
I'll second that. Is there unanimous consent to waive notice? Sounds like there is. So, Councillor Henderson, go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, I move that the November 18th, I need to check my own calendar to make sure I support this, that the November 18th, the 2020 City Council non-regular meeting from 1:30 to 5:30 be cancelled. That sounds like good news, but it isn't. That the orders of the day for the November 16th to 18th, 2020 City Council meeting be changed as follows. November 18th, 2020 recess 5:30, November 20, 2020 continuation from 9:30 to 5:30.
Second.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, seconded by Councillor Cartmell. Any questions on that schedule change? Not seeing any. Please vote.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
I've got conflicts with this, but that's all right. We'll deal with this later.
Councillor Walters? We're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote. Carried. Are there any notices of motion today?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have one.
Go ahead, Councillor Walters.
At the next regular scheduled council meeting, I will move that administration provide a short report on the number of times Subdivision Development Appeal Board has overturned City of Edmonton Development Service decisions related to front drive garages where lanes exist. A summary of the stated reasons, some analysis of where a zoning bylaw may be contributing through a lack of clarity.
Okay, notice is received. I'll just flag that I need to get some advice on the jurisdiction of council vis-a-vis the delegated authority of SDAB, but we've got time to consider that between now and then. So, but notice is received. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have one.
Go ahead, Councillor McKean.
Thank you. Additional housing for vulnerable Indigenous Edmontonians is clearly needed, as illustrated by high-profile encampments in the city. We already know Indigenous people are seriously overrepresented in Edmonton's homeless population, yet Indigenous housing operators seem to be seriously underrepresented. Given this apparent imbalance, I'll move at the following next meeting of council that administration provide a report to committee with information on the following: the number of affordable and supportive housing units already operated and or owned by organizations which identify as Indigenous, a list of proposed housing projects led by Indigenous organizations, Any work underway or planned by the City of Edmonton to support and expand the supply of Indigenous-led affordable and supportive housing units. A number of Edmontonians sleeping rough who identify as Indigenous, and a scan of other jurisdictions in Canada and recommendations on ways to foster growth in Indigenous housing in Edmonton led by Indigenous organizations.
Notice of motion is received. Notice of intent to second that, I'll offer. Just for what it's worth. Any other notices coming forward today? Not hearing any, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much.